Okay, so here we are about to start working in a ladder base. So again, the first 2 beads, add on, go through them once, and go through them twice. Through one, and then down through the other, so that they sit nicely together with the holes facing upwards. Okay, so we're going to add another, our 3rd bead, and go up through, just like I showed you in ladder stitch. And here we're going to do 4. And I'm just going to show you a little bit here. Now the turn, on this first turn, I like to go underneath and tie a little knot and then go up through the bead. And that bead is secure now. And go back down just to make sure that the thread looks like it will for everything else. And we will bury that knot in the work. Okay. We just add 2 beads, go down our 2nd one, come up the next one. 2 beads, go down, and now because we've got no next bead to come up, there's nothing over this side, we have to come back and go up the 1st bead. Then cross over and go up the bead on the end. That way we're in our place to turn. Okay, we'll go and do another one, another row. Now we go through the 2 beads, so we add 2 and we go through 2. Add 2 and go through the end one. We're going to do our little complex turn so that we're just going through 1 bead at the side of it, and then we're crossing our thread over and coming up through the end bead. We pop another row in, 2 beads, go through the next 2 beads, add 2 beads, go through the end bead. Help them sit correctly. And come down, and you're going to go at the bead at the side. Pull your thread in and then cross the thread over to go through the end bead. You'll see that that bead crosses over, that thread crosses over, and there you go. One more, add 2 beads, go through 2 beads, help the beads sit correctly, add 2 beads, go down 1, and cross the bead over to the one that's sitting next to it. There we go, and then bring the thread up through the bead on the end. There you go. Of course, you can work lots of different widths of these. You can do lots of stitches so that you have these, double columns all the way across to make a thicker, wider piece of work. But I thought I'd show you just a little bit of embellishment onto this herringbone. So we're going to start to do a little embellishing now. So we're going to add our 2 beads. This time we're only going to come up through 1 bead. And before we go up that 2nd bead, we're going to add a little 15. And then we're going to add our 2 8s again. And help them sit right. And do our regular turn. complex turn through the end bead. Okay, so you can see how that little bead sits in there, gives that little bit of sparkle with it being metallic. Okay, all right, and next we're going to do another row and go down one, and this time we're going to add an 11 seed bead before we go up the next bead. Pull this thread over and add 2 beads and go in. Help them sit and make our turn. So you can see now we have our little silver bead, we have our blue bead, which gives us a little bit more space between our 2 columns of 2. Okay, and the next row we're going to add our 2 8s, and now I'm going to add a 3mm fire polish round. Sits in there nice and comfortable. Make our 2 more 8s and make our turn. Okay. You can see that we're getting a kind of Y shape happening here. And our next row, our 2 8s. Help them sit correctly. And here I'm going to add 3 of the seed beads because 2 just wouldn't have cut it on this case. Not all seed beads are created equal. Some are skinnier than others. And you have to just go with it. Add 2 more of our 8s. Have them sit. Do our turn just through one and up through the edge. We will add 2 more. And this time I'm going to add a 4mm fire polish round. And our 2 more of our 8s. Do our turn. Make sure you pull that in tightly so that when you're increasing you will have a tendency of it to show a bit of thread on each side. So you want to make sure that you pull that tight so that it fits snugly around. Okay, now because this 4mm is quite deep, we're going to go through it again on our next row. So we're going to add the 2 beads, go through the next bead, the fire polish, and the next bead across. So we're going right through there. So I've got 3 beads on as I'm pulling through. And then we add our 2 more 8s and do our turn. And this is just so that the beads, the embellishment beads, don't get too scrunched up. So on our next one, we're going to do our 2 8s, and then we're back. We're going to reverse this now. So we're going to go into our 3 11s. 2 8s. And you got to pull a little bit on this to make sure it's going to snug in and be around the beads. And back up for our turn. So you can see now we have the beads have got a graduation in there. We'll finish closing this up, so it's just adding the embellishment beads backwards. So this means the white fire polish this time. Your 2/8. You have to pull a little bit tighter when you're closing in as well, so everything sits well. 2 more of our 8s. This time just one of our seed beads, our size 11s. Give it a little pull, put in our 2/8, do our turn. You can see this here. It's got that closing up feel to it. And add our 2/8, our little 15 bead to our next one. Make sure your beads lay properly. And 2 more of our 8 beads and execute our turn. And now we're back to just the straight old 8 beads, so we can go through the 2 beads. The beads lay properly, and execute the turn. Make sure to pull it snug and through that edge bead. You got one more to close this baby up here through the 2. Add 2. And finish our turn. Okay, so if that was the end, you could see that your beads were belayed around a little bit odd. You'd have this gap. It wouldn't be the nice solid end that you have at the other end. So what you want to do is go through and ladder stitch these center 2 beads together. So you go through the next bead, and then up through the other one of the pair that's in the center, back down, and then back up again. And you can see that you have a bit more of a firm edging on there once you've finished working a ladder stitch without getting your thread caught like I do. Okay, with there, and you can go through it a couple of times to make sure it sits really well and is closed up. And there you have it, your little piece of herringbone with some embellishments in there. Nice and simple, easy way. You could make that into a ring. You know, we write a few more rows and we would have had a ring there.